Hello booktube, hello book friends, welcome back to my channel and another reading week update. This one for the 10th of May 2025, and it's been quite a good week, I think. I've had quite a bit of fun, and got group read, buddy read, and a couple of sort of personal projects that have progressed a little bit. So yeah, I think overall I've had quite a good week. I think in my last reading update I had just started reading The Red Coffin by Sam Eastland, which is an Inspector Pekala crime stroke mystery novel. I've finished this now. It was quite good. Quite enjoyed it. It was a nice sort of light fiction, really. It was nothing too kind of intense. Inspector Pekala is the old Russian Tsar's special investigator who during the Russian Revolution is sent to basically sent to Siberia and a gulag, and then when something happens in the previous book, which is the first in the series, is brought back by Stalin to be basically his special investigator, and that then plays out in the first story, and because Pekala is successful in his investigation, I think, if I remember rightly, he's given a choice of kind of his freedom, or he can stay, and he chooses to stay, and this is sort of the next story as Stalin's special investigator, which is set sort of just before the start of the Second World War, when tensions between the Soviet Union and Germany are, shall we say, uncertain. The Soviets are busy building the T-34 tank, which is the ubiquitous Red Coffin in the title, and there is some concern that Germany will steal the sort of the secrets of the T-34, and that if that happens, Russia will lose its advantage over the Soviet Union. And there's a murder, and Pekala is called in to kind of investigate. And it's quite a good story. The murder element is sort of part of the story, and then there is the kind of I suppose the espionage and intrigue over the has Germany stolen the plans to the tank, and what's going to happen, and it ends up with quite a explosive ending, as you might expect with a tank involved. I really enjoyed it. Certainly am enjoying the series. Okay, it's only the second book in the series, but enjoying the series so far, and we'll carry on reading. It's the sort of series, I think, based on the first two books anyway, looks like you could pick up anywhere, because there are sort of flashback scenes which tell kind of the backstory to Pekala and some of the things that have happened to him. And I think some of those, although they're not copy and paste, they are common to both the books that I've read, so you don't have to worry about kind of having all of the backstory by the looks of things. So if that is a series that appeals to you and you can't find book one just to start the series, you would probably be okay, I think, picking up the series at any point. But as I say, I've only read the first two, so I might be wrong on that. If you pick up, I don't know how many books there are in the series, but if you pick up book 6, for example, the author might have stopped doing it by that point. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed that. And then I have been reading, as you probably know, a series of books as part of a personal project that are related to war artists, poets, conflict journalists, and so on. And one of the journalists I've been particularly interested in is an Australian journalist called Alan Moorehead, who was active in the 30s, I think, right the way then into the sort of 50s and even into the 60s. I'm not quite sure of his kind of career trajectory beyond what I know about in the Second World War at the moment. But certainly he was writing, he's an Australian journalist, but he was writing for the British Daily Express during the Second World War. And he travelled with General Montgomery, or Field Marshal Montgomery, all the way through the sort of the desert campaign, into Italy, into France on D-Day, saw the battles in Arnhem, and went all the way basically to Berlin and the end of the Second World War, and sort of was witness to some of the surrenders at the end of the war. And kind of quite applicable for this week, given that the day before yesterday was VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. But he writes, he writes incredibly well. It's the kind of, journalism that, if the Daily Express were written in that way today, it would be a paper worth reading, in my opinion. But yeah, this is that story. So this is Eclipse, and it's just, it's just fascinating. You kind of, because he was literally pretty much at the front line most of the time, although he was obviously falling back to submit his reports to the paper and, keep his own personal diary, obviously. This is just contemporaneous at the time, what was going on, a lot of the horrors, the destruction that he was seeing, kind of really brings it home that, this wasn't just a war off in a foreign land. This was very much, a war of, destroying people's lives generally. This wasn't just armies, going onto a battlefield and shooting at one another. This was, in some cases, wholesale destruction of towns and villages, which were, people's homes, and, effectively making them homeless. So yeah, I would recommend this if you're interested in the Second World War, if you're interested in kind of conflict journalism. This is well worth a read, and it doesn't pull its punches. So yeah, that's Eclipse by Alan Moorehead. And then two books that I'm reading this week. One is a group read, and one is a buddy read. The group read, I think I mentioned last week, but didn't know what the book was because it hadn't been decided. Well, it has been decided now, and the book is Last Chance to See by Douglas Adams and Mark Carwardine. This is Douglas Adams of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fame. Mark Carwardine is a, I think technically zoologist as opposed to biologist, but he at the time, I think, was head of the World Wildlife Fund. But this is their story of going out together to see some of the species in the world that are most under threat and possibly the last chance that anyone will get to see them. And the kind of conservation story behind those species, what's being done to try and make sure that they don't go extinct. And this was written in the early 90s, I think. Yeah, 1990. And written by Adams, in a kind of quite humorous style. And this is so. I've only probably a little bit more than halfway through now, but they've seen the ii, which is a species of lemur, Komodo dragon, white rhino. I saw something before the white rhino, and I can't remember what that was now. The mountain gorillas. And so, yeah, it's all of those stories. I think, I don't want to say too much about it because it's a group read and we haven't discussed it yet as a group, but it is fascinating. And particularly for me, because 1990 was the time when I was studying biology at university, and that's how I got to read this book, basically. Not that it was recommended reading or anything, but it was, kind of a book that was relevant to our course that, lecturers said, oh, you might be interested in reading this. I think partly because it's Douglas Adams and, there was that kind of link there to the humour of the writing as much as, so, it's not all stuffy text books. And so on. So yeah, I will report back at a later date on this. And then the buddy read is, and I just want to say I am so enjoying my buddy read. My buddy read is with Pat at Book Chat with Pat, and it's really great reading with her. And we've had one discussion so far on Stephen King's You Like It Darker, which is his collection of predominantly short stories. Well, there's one novella in here that was published last year, so about this time last year. And we've split the book up into 4 chunks, and we read the first 3 stories this week and have just finished the novella and another story. And I don't want to say too much about the novella and the other story, but the first 3 are one of them I think is kind of feels like the start of a longer novel that Stephen King never wrote, and concerns to a writer and an artist, and kind of how they got their talent, basically. And then there's one. The other 2 are quite short. One's only sort of like not even 10 pages, and is. I was sitting reading it and thinking, where's this going? And then it's like, oh, it's going there, and then it was it, basically. So yeah, that was a bit of a shocker. And then the final one is a little bit. It kind of has shades of The Outsider and If It Bleeds. If you've read either of those 2, well, one's a novella and one's a short. One's a novel. One's a novel and one's a novella. And a little bit like that. But, a spirit, essentially, who has been around for a very long time. And you don't really realise that's what the story is about until the very end. So yeah, I really enjoyed these three. I think for me, of the first three, one was the the first one about the artist and the writer was was okay, and the other two were a bit, yeah, not so sure about those. And um, we'll see about the rest. I haven't had a chance to discuss the novella and the next story with Pat yet. We're going to do that uh, later today. This will come out, and we're due to talk this evening. Or this evening my time, which I think is kind of lunchtime, early afternoon for Pat. So we're juggling the time difference a little bit, but it's working out quite well because I think it's only about 5 hours, so it's okay. But yeah, I'm so far mixed feelings, which I think from what I've read of reviews and things is the general consensus about this. But it's still fun, and it's a buddy read with Pat. So what's not to like? I have to say, I'm really enjoying just buddy reading with Pat and talking to her about, over Voxer and WhatsApp, our thoughts about this. So, that in itself, this could be really bad, and it would still be good because it's a buddy read with Pat. So there you go. And then finally, the something that I've been dipping in and out of for a little while, and have kind of just sort of started to get into a bit more, is another conflict journalism piece, which is Don't Be Afraid of the Bullets by Laura Kasinof. And she is a journalist who was and has been in Yemen and was there during the Arab Spring in 2011. So she was there from about 2008 to just sort of, I don't know, 2011 or 2012. And this is kind of her experience. So she went partly to improve and learn her Arabic as a language, and she went to the Arabic school in the capital, which has escaped me completely. And while she was there, her aim was to sort of write some pieces and sell them, and sort of self-fund herself, basically self-support herself, with some articles and so on. And as a consequence, was just there at that time when the Arab Spring was happening, and she was reporting on it. I don't know, about a third of the way through. The first couple of chapters were quite shocking, and as a result, I started this a while ago and put it down, because at the time I was like, no, look, I love this project, but it does sometimes bring up books and topics that are quite hard to deal with, and I kind of need to separate myself a little bit from those things. So that's basically what was it. As I say, I started it a while ago, and I've only just picked it up again. But it's fascinating. It's a completely different culture. It seems a very friendly and welcoming culture, which I think, even though probably at the time, and certainly now, it's the sort of thing that where there are issues with, or perceived issues with, migrants and so on, that this is, perhaps aren't as welcomed as they might be in some countries. The countries that they are coming from have a completely different attitude to migrants from Western cultures. So it's it's fascinating reading. As I say, only a third of the way through, so and I I have a feeling that it's possible. With where the story goes and where we are at the current moment, I might have to take another break from it. So I might not finish it before next weekend's update, and I might move on to something else and come back to it. But we'll see. So that, I think, is everything. He says, thinking hard. I think so. I think that's everything that I've been reading this week, at least book-wise. So, if you have been, thank you for watching, and I will speak to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.